My name is Susan Vaughn, and I have been researching reality creation and conscious evolution for 25 years. I'm an author, teacher, workshop facilitator, hypnotherapist, and psychotherapist. I began teaching classes on reality creation and conscious evolution over 15 years ago. What I'm about to present to you is the information I've both gathered and figured out after thousands of hours of intense study and inner work that I gathered while in an altered state. Welcome to my Global Ascension series, Class 1, From Victim Consciousness to Higher Consciousness. In this class, you will learn all about Eve's apple that contained the knowledge of good and evil. I believe that we are in the midst of a tremendous evolution in consciousness that is forcing us to become spiritually enlightened. For if we do not, we may destroy ourselves as a species. In effect, we must either evolve or die, for those who do not evolve will be unable to protect themselves from the cancer and other degenerative diseases that are being caused by the unprecedented amount of pollution and poor health practices of all kinds that now exist upon our planet. To that end, we who are Earth's inhabitants must do what it takes to change the way we think and behave if we are to remain incarnate on a planet that is quickly losing its ability to both nourish and sustain us. The changes we must make are truly monumental, for to make these changes we must shift out of a belief system that perpetuates victim consciousness and into a belief system that can best be described as higher consciousness. Victim consciousness is the result of every belief system on our earth. It exists within all cultures, all religions, and all social systems. Unfortunately, because victim consciousness stands on a faulty foundation, it has negative consequences that have led humanity terribly astray, creating all the crime, war, conflict, poverty, and disease that has always plagued us. Because higher consciousness stands on a higher truth, it will force humanity to face its own shadow and consciously evolve. Here's the truth as I see it. We are, first and foremost, an invisible formless consciousness that radiates an energy field. This energy field holds within it the blueprint that produces our DNA upon which our body is built. When we incarnate, we enter into thousands of time-space realities simultaneously. However, we live them in consciousness one at a time, so they seem to follow a linear historical progression. We only have one lifetime, but it is huge, multidimensional, and enormously expanded. In each lifetime we live in consciousness, we evolve and grow by making mistakes and learning from the consequences of our actions. All of our lifetimes impact one another. Unlearned lessons from one lifetime becomes inventory for the next life lived in consciousness. I discuss this in much greater detail in my video on past lives. When we, who are invisible, formless consciousnesses, incarnate, we instantly take form and become dimensional. Of course, this occurs in the usual way as sperm meets ovum, becoming a single cell that multiplies to become a living infant. Once we create the dense three-dimensional form we call a human body, we have the ability to impact one another. This impact can either be experienced as positive and pleasant, or what could loosely be defined as good, or as negative, painful, and unpleasant, or what could loosely be defined as evil. It is our desire to feel good that determines what we do, where we go, who we get involved with, what kind of career we choose, what we buy, how we beautify ourselves, and on and on. Since everyone on the planet wants to feel good and avoid pain, doing what it takes to feel good becomes the guiding impulse of our lives. This is true whether we are 2 or 92. We all simply want to feel good. However, that which a 2-year-old defines as good will be radically different than that which a 92-year-old defines as good. Herein lies our diversity, for each of us defines good in our own unique way, according to our innate interests, talents, desires, and maturity level. Unfortunately, sometimes the things we think will make us feel good actually make us feel bad. Or else, like drug and alcohol addiction, they start out feeling good, but eventually lead to pain. When this occurs, we are motivated to reflect upon our desires and to reevaluate what we want. In this context, then, it is the negative impact we experience from the choices and decisions we make that motivate us to grow, change, and evolve. Without pleasurable and painful impact, human beings have no motivation to change. Because of this, it could be said that being physical is a method of evolution, and that it is the knowledge of good and evil that allows us to evolve. When we, who are unlimited, non-physical beings, enter into the third dimension of time, space, and form, we enter as unconscious, ignorant, immature, and unaware infants. Throughout our lives, we develop the ability to become more and more conscious, knowledgeable, mature, aware, and wise. Because wisdom takes a lifetime to achieve, and in fact, many thousands of lifetimes. In our dimension of reality, wisdom waits on time and experience. The fact of the matter is that the more conscious, knowledgeable, mature, aware, and wise we are, the more positive tends to be the impact we have on ourselves and everyone and everything around us. Vice versa is true as well. The less conscious, knowledgeable, mature, and aware and wise we are, the more negative, painful, or evil the impact seems to be. In addition, it must be understood that maturity is not just based on physical age. Rather, it has to do with the maturity level of the soul, which takes many thousands of lifetimes to evolve. As souls, we evolve by learning from our mistakes. As we learn from the error of our ways, we eventually become wise. Because of the law of attraction, birds of a feather tend to flock together, which is another way that magnetic attraction works. We always tend to gravitate to others that we resonate with. We match vibrations in many obvious ways through interests, hobbies, careers, gender, race, nationality, social class, and status. But we also match vibration in not so obvious ways. Lovers who fall out of love may have been attracted to each other in the beginning because of looks or other interests and desires, but come to hate each other over the long run because of unseen character weaknesses that they find unattractive. Not only do our attractions determine what we do and where we go, our energy field is also magnetically attractive. Now, this is really important. Our energy field is made up of hundreds of thousands of energy waves, all of which vibrate. Each wave of energy is representative of a thought with its attendant feelings. Thoughts are electrical, feelings are magnetic. The two together create your vibration, which is magnetically attractive to other vibrations of similar magnitude. This is called the law of attraction. Since it is the feeling tone that determines what we attract, if we are depressed or filled with martyrhood that we feel subliminally almost all the time, we will attract a reality that causes our depression or our martyrhood to resurface again and again. Therefore, though one can be a very nice person who will never do anything to harm another, if one is depressed, they will attract others who depress them. If one is full of martyrhood, they will attract others who misunderstand and take advantage of them. This is why one wants to be positive and happy all the time. When one is positive and happy, they will attract a reality that feels positive and makes them feel even happier. Now, of course, that's easier said than done, but that's the goal and is what we are trying to do as we learn reality creation. Your energy field not only encompasses the you that you know yourself to be today, but all your incarnate selves, which means that all the thoughts and feelings you have ever felt in any of your incarnations still vibrate within you. The sum total of all of the energy waves that exist within your energy field determines your point of attraction, not your random individual thoughts and feelings. For individual thoughts and feelings can and do conflict with one another and cancel each other out over time. Because it encompasses all your incarnate selves, your point of attraction is always that which will allow your whole self to consciously evolve. Therefore, if you need to resolve a past life relationship by forgiving that person for having hurt you, you will attract them into this lifetime so that you can resolve that little bit of unfinished business. That's why we attract what we need to evolve, rather than what your ego believes will make you feel good. Everyone who is human has both a light side and a dark side, or things that are attractive about them and things that are unattractive or even downright repulsive. When we are young and immature, physical attraction is determined by the shapeliness of one's body parts, but as we mature, we come to value one's invisible character more than one's body, for we learn that an attractive person with character weaknesses isn't that pleasant to be around in the long run. When love dies because of one's character flaws, those who are emotionally mature may choose to overcome their character weaknesses and change. If not, they will blame their pain on others and remain the same. It is blame that stagnates our growth, causing us to evolve very slowly, for blame prevents one from changing. This dynamic works for many different things we love. When our love of food, alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, money, power, etc. causes negative consequences that repel us, we have the option of reevaluating what we love and changing our behavior. When we discover that our love for the wrong kinds and quantity of food makes us fat and unhealthy, we can either blame the food or the food manufacturer, or take responsibility for our actions and change our lifestyle. What could be a simpler way to evolve? When enough people reject a product because it is bad for their health, the manufacturer who created it either goes out of business or changes the product. This would work perfectly every time if it were not for deception and false advertising. When we are lied to about products and services, we find ourselves not only wasting our money, but also feeling angry and hopeless, which is a low vibration that attracts a similar reality. Because deception has become a way of life in the global marketplace, as well as in allopathic medicine, finding reliable sources of information is imperative if we are to consciously evolve and globally ascend. This aspect of being physical forces us to develop our intuition, to read between the lines, to do our research and examine all of the facts, not just the ones that the advertising is giving us, if we are to extricate ourselves from the liars and align with the people who tell the highest truth. All actions create a reaction, or what could be called consequences, that can be experienced as positive or negative. When we blame the negative consequences of our actions on others, we completely disempower ourselves, for we remove ourselves from the solution to our problems. In effect, we say to ourselves that the solution to our pain lies in somebody else's hands, and if only they would change, our life would be better. This is the essence of victim consciousness. When we don't take responsibility for our pain by changing what we contributed to the problem, we remain stuck with the same old pain for lifetimes, which is endlessly created in thousands of different forms. In order to make the shift into higher consciousness, we must choose to see our part in the creation of our problems, for that is the only part we can do anything about. Generally, our part has to do with the stories we tell ourselves. If you find yourself blaming anyone for your pain, including yourself, for any reason, not only are you disempowering yourself, you are still vibrating in victim consciousness. Because victim consciousness is an emotionally charged belief system that has existed on the planet for thousands of years and therefore thousands of lifetimes, via the law of attraction, you will attract other people to you who also vibrate in victim consciousness. Because victims blame one another for their pain, you will create an endless merry-go-round of blame in which forms change, but never the content. Victim consciousness cripples our perceptions. To understand this, you must understand the nature of the brain and of consciousness itself. Because our brains are bombarded with millions of bits of information on a moment-to-moment basis, our brains naturally screen most of it out of our awareness. If it didn't do this, we would be bombarded with too much stimuli, which would cripple our ability to focus our attention on what we need to focus it on. This means that once victim consciousness becomes our perceptual point of view, we naturally screen out of our awareness everything that does not fit the picture of our victimhood. The consequences of this is that we simply don't see how we ourselves contributed to the formation of our problems. It's always the other guy's fault. Still stuck on blame, all we can see is what others did to cause our pain. It is my experience that it takes an act of will to change this scenario. When one is ready to make the shift into higher consciousness, the first thing that they must do is become willing to change their story about causation. For global ascension to occur, we must all fully understand that we create our own reality. We create it by, number one, following our attractions or doing what we think will make us feel good. Number two, we create it by hanging out with others of similar vibration who encourage us to continue our behavior. Number three, through our energy field, we attract life experience to us via our vibration. Number four, our brains screen out everything that is contradictory to our belief system. They screen it out of our awareness, making it impossible for us to see the bigger picture of creation. By telling ourselves the truth about reality creation, we can begin to understand how to consciously evolve not only ourselves, but our entire species. Although it is relatively easy to tell ourselves the truth about the consequences of our negative, self-destructive addictions, figuring out why we choose to be self-destructive in the first place is another issue altogether. That has to do with traumatic events of the past that have not yet been fully healed, that cause us to feel both disempowered and ashamed. All of us have been shamed to some extent, and many people have been massively shamed from infancy. Those with massive shame were emotionally, mentally, and/or physically abused as children. This has enormous impact on the developing brain. Shame is a feeling of being inherently flawed, so much so that we can't be fixed. Shame incapacitates us in multiple ways, but mostly it takes away our spiritual freedom to evolve, for it makes us self-destructive. To understand why, I must teach you a bit about biology. When we are born, we have thousands of neural pathways within our brains that don't go anywhere. As we mature, these neural pathways begin to connect. They do so based upon the stories we tell ourselves. In essence, each neural pathway represents a complete thought. The thought, I am bad, I will always be a failure, reflects three-dimensionally in the brain as a well-worn, magnetically attractive neural pathway that lights up every time we have that thought. Since the nature of the brain is to regurgitate thought whether we want it to or not, it is always thinking. When something in our environment triggers our shame, such as making a mistake, this neural pathway in the brain that automatically lights up is the one that says, I am bad, I will always be a failure. This thought then instantly comes into our mind. When it does, it reinforces our shame. Since shame is a highly charged emotion, if you have a lot of shame, it will attract a similar reality. In referring to shame, I like to use the analogy of a cake. If you were making a cake and accidentally put in a cup of salt and a teaspoon of sugar instead of vice versa, what would you do with the cake when it was cooked? Would there be any way that it could be repaired? Absolutely none. The only thing that you could do with it would be to throw it out. This is why shame is so self-destructive and leads to all our pain. A shamed person will not only attract a shameful reality, they will continue to be ashamed of themselves for all the mistakes they make. Since we evolve by making mistakes and learning from the consequences of our action, to be ashamed of ourselves for making those mistakes is counterproductive. Shame reflects in 4 specific ways. We may favor only one way, or we may do them all to some extent. The first way it reflects is through emotional self-abuse. In this method, we tell ourselves a story about how bad, inadequate, unattractive, or stupid we are, how we will never get what we want, or that we will always be failures or losers at living life. This, of course, takes away our motivation to evolve, for why bother if we are so flawed that we don't have what it takes to improve? The second way shame reflects is through physical self-abuse, such as cutting or burning ourselves. Anorexia and bulimia also fall into this category. People who do this form of shame prefer to hurt themselves physically as well as verbally, for the physical pain produces more endorphins than just verbal self-abuse. Both physical and emotional abuse cause the brain to excrete endorphins, which are natural painkillers. These painkillers act like Novocaine in that they make us go numb. The third way shame reflects is to simply numb out our feelings of being flawed with pain-numbing addictions of some kind. Drugs, alcohol, food, smoking, hoarding, spending, and incessant TV gazing and video game playing, overwork, gambling, sex, power, and control are the most common ways we do this. By numbing ourselves out with whatever temporarily makes us feel better, we don't have to feel the effects of our self-inflicted, pain-producing shame. The fourth way that shame reflects in our world is to simply pass it on. Rather than feeling their own shame, they simply pass it on to others, which makes them feel flawed. Everyone on our planet who feels shamed received it from someone else who passed it on to them, for no infant is born with a sense of being flawed. The people who do this form of shame are the world's bullies. The less emotionally mature one is, the more likely they are to pass on shame in an emotionally or physically abusive way. As terrible as this sounds, most of us have done this form of shame to some extent at some time in our lives. Children are notorious for shaming their peers with taunts and jeers. Adolescents are the worst bullies of all. Parents do it to their children, and teachers to their students. Those of one race, social class, or country do it to another. We all do it at times to those we don't like or who anger us. Not only do we create individually, we create globally as one whole. Our global creation is a series of agreements that we have made about the nature of reality. Everyone on the planet has agreed with victim consciousness, which takes a variety of forms depending on one's country, culture, and religion. Beyond that, each culture determines what has the greatest value. Those who are valued because they have the right stuff are given special privileges that allow them to excel. Those of the wrong body type, gender, class, color, race, economic status, religion, etc., are not given equal access to resources, which means that they don't tend to excel. This kind of inequality leads to the social injustice that limits us and produces our collective pain. We play out our individual lives against a social backdrop of agreements that either limit us or set us free. When we are young, our brain is being neurally wired in the natural way that the brain matures to believe what we are told either literally or subliminally by our parents, educational system, the media, religion, and culture at large, even though most of it is erroneous. As we evolve, we must extricate ourselves from the backdrop of false beliefs that contribute to our shame by coming to know the truth about who we are. As creative, magnetically attractive beings, we are monumentally powerful. So much so that we have even created a reality in which unlimited, eternal, spiritually evolved beings can limit themselves and then pretend to die. This is astounding. It is in understanding how and why we did this that we regain the freedom to consciously evolve beyond it. This is achieved by doing inner work with one's higher self. The more one knows about reality creation, the clearer the communication with one's higher self becomes. Because the truth feels good, it resonates deep within our hearts. However, because the truth contradicts what we have been taught by our families, religion, and culture, it can cause us to feel a great deal of consternation that we must work through before the truth can actually set us free. This is the work of the spiritual journey. We must also deal with our perceptions of being victimized by realizing that the lies about reality creation we've been taught are illusions. When we consciously work through these illusions, by seeing the part we have played in the creation of our reality, we will get off that karmic wheel of victim consciousness and create a phenomenally healed reality. We are all co-creators. None of us are responsible for what other people think and feel or how others behave. Since we can't control others, we can't prevent them from doing bad things. All we can ever do is take responsibility for how we ourselves think, feel, and behave. Bad things happen to all incarnate beings, for here we must learn how to handle loss, limitation, and change. This produces emotional pain and reactivity, which we must learn how to handle appropriately. We are also here to learn how to appropriately express the full range of our emotions, all of which are important and valuable messengers. Without the ability to feel fear, shame, hurt, hopelessness, despair, loneliness, or anger, we would never know what needs to be changed. Rather, we would be like robots or automatons who never learn from the consequences of our actions. These uncomfortable emotions are never wrong or bad, for they are valuable messengers that tell us how we feel about our creation. But we must learn how to express them appropriately if they are to serve us in a positive way. When bad things happen to us, the only thing we must take responsibility for is our contribution to its creation. When relationships go bad, we must take responsibility for what we did or did not do to produce the result received. Once we figure this out, we have the option of changing our contribution. If we don't figure this out but stay in blame, we learn nothing about ourselves, which means that we neither change nor evolve. It is my belief that we have all contributed to our global situation with its present economic situation and pollution, even though few of us have consciously created it. I also believe that there is a secret government that controls us through lies and deception. I believe that they have an agenda that keeps the masses disempowered, dumbed down, and asleep. Our contribution to this creation is to remain disempowered, dumbed down, and asleep by believing the lies they tell us, eating the processed, devitamized, toxic food and water they give us, watching TV programs that stimulate our lust for violence, power, and sex, acquiescing to the amount of pollution that is on our planet and therefore in our bodies, and by refusing to face our own shadows. Only by aligning our behavior with higher truth will we stop supporting the system that is destroying us. We cannot globally ascend until this alignment is made. We are already deep into the shift into higher consciousness, for there are many people on the planet who already consciously evolved in this new paradigm. As those who are awake plant seeds of awakening in others, the entire process of global ascension will accelerate. In time, the entire planet will consciously evolve, and there will be nothing that the secret government or anyone else can do about it. The power is in our hands, which is where it always has been, only now we have the knowledge to activate it. Please pass the word, for our whole way out of our present challenges lies within this knowledge. Again, my name is Susan Vaughn. Thank you so much for listening. For more information on reality creation and conscious evolution, or to ask me questions, go to seekingenlightenment.net.